Welcome to the BEASTwriter podcast. I am your host, Ryan Sakamoto, and tonight we are going to be discussing Jimmy Garoppolo's trade value. So let's get started. Now, for those who are new to following me, thank you for tuning in. For those who already follow me, again, thank you to you as well. Be sure to turn on the bell notifications so you get notified when I go live or when I upload a video. That way you can stay up to date on all things Beast. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about Jimmy Garoppolo, the player, and what he brings to the table in terms of trade value. Well, in order to talk about the future, we have to delve into the past. And the 49ers are currently in the market for a quarterback for the second consecutive off-season. We saw it last year with Tom Brady. They ultimately lost the sweepstakes on that. As you can see in the background, he is off to Tampa Bay. No surprise there, and now he's playing in the Super Bowl. This is old news, but they were in play for Tom Brady's services, and this is why. Tom Brady, Ray Lewis, Tom Brady. Anyways, fast forward to today, and then you see Matthew Stafford was also in play with the San Francisco 49ers this year. They made a play for him, ultimately losing out to the rival LA Rams because in order to dump Jared Goff's contract, they were willing to also dump 2 first-round picks in that blockbuster deal. So moving on to that, and then peeling back another layer of the onion to get to the core, let's move on to Deshaun Watson. Again, I wrote numerous podcasts on Deshaun Watson potential trades, as well as Matthew Stafford one as well. So I included those pinned comments. I included those podcasts in the pinned comments section below, so you can stay up to date on what I had to say and how those podcasts that I previously discussed are relatable to this one. All right, so getting back to Deshaun Watson, well, I don't think it's a good deal because I think anytime that you have to give up your homegrown talent, you're doing yourself a disservice because the whole point of drafting players is to keep your homegrown talent in-house. And when you don't do that, it can turn out very, very badly. In my very first podcast episode, you will notice I was very critical of the DeForest Buckner trade, and now we see why. But getting back to Deshaun Watson, yeah, I think it's a long shot for the San Francisco 49ers to strike a deal. I think their best bet is to stay pat, don't hit the panic button, and they hold the number 12 overall pick. If you can package some kind of a stockpile draft pick deal to move up into the top 5 and get a quarterback like Zach Wilson from BYU, that would be my likely target. I think that's the better play. All right, so if that comes into play, where the 49ers go ahead and do as I said and trade up for Zach Wilson by using draft capital in order to make up and make the jump for that player, what are they going to do with Jimmy Garoppolo? Well, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is all but done in San Francisco. I said that in an earlier podcast, and again, you can see everything I had to say in real time at the point of those podcasts as they were being uploaded in my Power Podcast playlist at the end of the episode or in the pinned comments below. All right, so I'm not going to delve into that because we're specifically talking about Jimmy Garoppolo's trade value. So what happens to Jimmy G, right? So what's Jimmy Garoppolo's realistic trade value? I think that's a question we need to ask ourselves. And if you're GM John Lynch, of course you're going to want a first-round pick because how many Jimmy Garoppolos are out there, right? I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a top 20 quarterback. I wouldn't say he's a top 15 quarterback just yet, simply because he's too inconsistent in his game. He doesn't live to play another down, right? He doesn't show that he goes through his progressions. He's a one-read quarterback. So all these mental errors that you're seeing, you really didn't see coming from the New England Patriots because there's a small sample size to pull from. Now that he's had some games under his belt, we can really get a larger sample size and teams can now assess what they're really getting in Jimmy Garoppolo. Plus he's injury prone. So when you put that all together, what's the realistic trade value? The 49ers yielded a second round pick. And my gut feeling is, again, Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to be the starting quarterback in 2021 for the 49ers. He'll be elsewhere. He'll be playing elsewhere. And my top landing spot, as I said in an earlier podcast, goes back to the New England Patriots. They know what they're getting in Jimmy Garoppolo. They obviously drafted him in the second round for a reason. So with Jimmy Garoppolo, Bill Belichick has something to work with. Bill Belichick is arguably the best coach to ever coach in the NFL, and we know why. So with that being said, I think that there's a lot of things that come into play, but again, the best availability is durability. right? The best availability is durability. And if you're Jimmy Garoppolo and you're looking to make a play for Jimmy Garoppolo, well, in the last 3 years, it doesn't bode well for him. He's missed 23 regular season games in the last 3 years. If you're doing the math, that is a 52% success rate of him being active or not on a week-by-week basis. So can you really trust Jimmy Garoppolo, or is he weak in the knees? These are questions that every GM is going to have to ask themselves. And when you're getting paid $26.4 million as your 2021 cap number, that's a lot of bread for a guy who may or may not play week in and week out. So again, the tradable value for him to come into play and be that guy for the New England Patriots, that leverage of trade negotiations in terms of the value for Jimmy Garoppolo comes down because, again, we're getting a larger sample size. And if you're looking at the last 3 years, it doesn't bode well in terms of Jimmy Garoppolo's trade value, which I believe is going to be a day 2 pick. I think that's what the 49ers are ultimately going to give up. They're going to yield. They're going to yield a day 2 pick or a couple day 2 picks depending on the draft position. So while Lynch asked for a day 1 pick, Bill Belichick will likely offer a day 2 pick. The Patriots also hold the number 15 overall pick. And if you look at my 2021 NFL Mock Draft 1.0, you will know that I have them slated to take Mac Jones. But seeing how Belichick is watching Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, as all the highlights behind me are indicating, he wants a proven NFL quarterback with playoff experience. And if you are in the fast track in getting to that goal, you're going to want a guy like a Jimmy Garoppolo who understands the system and understands the scheme better than a rookie quarterback who still has to learn the NFL game, the speed, and so forth. So that's why I believe Bill Belichick will make a play for Jimmy Garoppolo when it's all said and done, and he will be off to New England. All right. So if that plays out, I then have Belichick, trusting Nick Saban, making that deal in terms of like weighing the pros and cons as to Mac Jones or Jimmy Garoppolo, right? So if that comes into play where Jimmy Garoppolo gets shipped to New England, and of course New England gives back a second round pick in return or whatever the case may be, day 2 picks, day 3 picks, I don't know what the draft compensation is going to be, but you get the point. If there's a swap there, that bodes well for New England because they didn't have to give up the number 15th overall pick, which is 3 picks behind the San Francisco 49ers, and now they can just draft the BPA. I believe that guy to be running back Najee Harris out of Alabama. Now that seems a little high based on mock drafts, but make no mistake, Najee Harris is the real deal. Justin Jefferson was my draft crush last year, and people were like, oh man, he's not as good as and a wide receiver cream of the crop draft class. I said Jefferson. This year, my draft crush is Najee Harris. Check the YouTube and Twitter receipts, bro. I called it. But no, getting back to Najee Harris, there's a reason why I believe he's a perfect fit for Bill Belichick, and that's why I believe it gives New England Patriots draft flexibility to go ahead and select the best player available at number 15. All right? So it's a win-win for both teams when you look at it. From the San Francisco 49ers perspective, they wipe their hands clean of Jimmy G. They save the team $23.6 million for their cap savings, which is crucial because they have 40 plus free agents, I should say, coming up for unrestricted free agency and so forth. So you need to resign guys like Jason Verrett, Trent Williams, Kyle Juszczyk, K'Wan Williams. The list goes on and on and on. Kendrick Bourne. So money doesn't grow on trees. It has to come from somewhere. So if you can move on from Jimmy Garoppolo, you can use that money to maybe sign 1 or 2 of those players. All right. Then you pick up a second round draft pick in return for wiping your hands clean of Jimmy G. So you have some draft flexibility where you can obviously use that draft capital, stockpile some picks or future picks, and to play for Zach Wilson with that 12th overall pick in this year's draft. On the flip side of that, and get a guy like Zach Wilson. On the flip side of that, you look at the New England Patriots, right? So New England Patriots get their quarterback of the future in Jimmy Garoppolo, or at least a stopgap quarterback, better than Cam Newton, and then they get draft flexibility at 15 to draft the best player available, which in this case is Najee Harris, in my opinion. I believe Bill Belichick and Nick Saban have a very dynamic and close relationship, which is why I believe Nick Saban will pound the table for Bill Belichick that Najee Harris is the real deal, and why NFL teams don't draft him higher or have him higher on their boards, or why current mock drafts don't have him higher on the rated board, rated higher on their respective boards. That Najee Harris is definitely the best player available at 15. You obviously need a running back. We all know how Jimmy G obviously needs a running game in order for him to succeed. So in doing so, you're going to roll with a guy like Najee Harris. And that's how I see it playing out. Time will tell to see if it does, but look for that to be some type of a scenario, as I think that would be a win-win situation for both parties. All right. Whew, a lot to talk about. So, yeah, long story short, Jimmy Garoppolo goes to the New England Patriots. The 49ers yield a second-round pick or a couple day 2 picks in return. It's a win-win because both teams still hold their first-round picks without giving up draft position. The 49ers can then use that draft capital that they got with New England to stockpile picks and move up for Zach Wilson. On the flip side of that, the New England Patriots get draft flexibility because then they can draft running back out of Alabama, Najee Harris at 15. Well, that'll be it for today. I hope you liked what I had to say. If you did, please hit the subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your screen as I keep all things Beast. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good night. BEASTwriter.